Hey guys, this is Casby with Dave, and today you join me for episode 43 of Casby Road to Exploration, and today we start with just another fuel launch, because we're going to need some fuel on the station, because last episode you may remember I took on a rather large contractor ship for tourists all over the Kerbal system, so we're going to need some fuel for that. I should mostly be able to do it with my, with the Ares 4, the nuclear-powered the spacecraft, which would hopefully, limit the amount of fuel I'll have to burn, but because so many different Kerbals want to go to so many different places, I will need some fuel, so I'm launching the Ares 2. The Ares 3? Yeah, I think that's what it is, aboard my Pulsar X, my newest, greatest rocket. I am working on the Pulsar Y, which will be kind of more of a... It'll be a two-stage rocket rather than a single stage. Probably quite a lot like a 3.5 meter version of the... Pulsar 4, the much beloved and missed rocket, but I'm not entirely sure yet because I haven't. Well, I've built it in expendable mode, but I may need more tanks and engines for reusable mode because you need more payload to orbit. Because I want it to be a 50-ton launch vehicle. But anyway, yeah, here we are, just getting into orbit, and then after a little while. We're going to ditch this stage, and I've switched around where the fairing is now on the stage, so I don't have to decouple that fairing to decouple the payload, which is good, because I want to get that fairing back, because it cost about $1,000. So yeah, after a little bit of tweaking, I get my close encounter, and that's good, and the rest is just pretty much falling around the orbit and doing my normal kind of maneuvering in. So here we are, just getting to the station. I'm going to dock to this bottom docking port. I've once again intentionally not decoupled that little fairing around the docking port because I don't have to, and also, why would I leave that in space? It's just more junk, although I think it would be deleted, but basically it's more money. I'm being very, very scrupulous now, even though I have quite a lot of money. There's no reason to just fritter it away. That's the word I was looking for. And developing the Pulsar Y is quite expensive because I've had to unlock a bunch of new engines and things. So yeah. Anyway, that's docked, and we'll be able to fuel up the spacecraft fairly soon after we bring back the first, well, not the first stage, just the whole rocket, because it's a single stage. Yes, the best SSTO. I did burn a little too long, and I came back a little fast, and everything explodes, and that's fine because it was just the fins, and then the solar panels explode, but also the reflectron explodes, and that is my antenna, so I have no command, so I slam this 50,000 fund stage right into the ocean, and I don't recover it, which is the first one to fail, and they've only launched like 2 or 3, so that sucks really loads, because I really wanted that stage back, because it's expensive, but hey, these things happen. We'll have to do that and fix that in the future. I think it was probably something to do with leaving the fairing on. Anyway, actually not using any of that fuel, using some of the fuel I already have on the station, I fuel up the Ares 4, load it with 2 tourists who just want to, one of them just wants to go to the moon, just wants to orbit and fly by the moon, the other one wants to orbit the moon and land on Minmus, the other 2 want to land on the moon, so I didn't bother bringing them because they're going to fly by the moon when because they also want to fly by the moon and land on the moon, but they'll do that when they land on the moon, which will be done in one mission. So I'm just sending the ones who solely want to fly by the moon and not land. One of them does want to go to Minmus, but yeah, they have very complex and annoying requests. But anyway, we're taking them out there on the Ares 4, which is my rather nice rocket. It hasn't flown a ton of times, not rocket, spacecraft, because... well, it just doesn't have a ton of use yet. It will more when I have a lander stationed at the moon, so I won't have to keep sending out the Thor lander. I think the Thor lander will become the stationed lander, which could be good. And after a quick load, because of that annoying texture glitch, we're on our way. All the way out to the moon. This also carries a lot of life support. This could survive for a long time. That's kind of its point. It has a lot of Delta V and could do long-range missions if it so desired. It could probably go to Duna if I really wanted, but probably wouldn't have quite enough life support. And not really enough space for Kerbals. I know it technically does, but I don't really like putting Kerbals in tiny spaces for ages because that just seems so unrealistic. And I do like my realism. Anyway, so we get, I think, 14 grand for initializing our flyby, and 7 grand for initializing the flyby, and 14 for getting into orbit, because both the Kerbals wanted to get into orbit, one of them cared about flying by. But yeah, you can see we've completed a few of the missions there. Basically, that's that done, and we're just going to leave right now. I put myself on a low orbit just to simplify getting back from the moon. But yeah, no, that was relatively easy. I made a little money. and each of them paying me, I think, about 7,000 funds for each objective, and then about 60,000 at the end. So I mean, if you calculate that, that's if you add that together, it's almost 300,000. So it does cover the cost of that lost booster. So that's fine, and we've got a big Eve mission coming. Well, a big Eve mission which will be, hopefully being completed this episode, which, this should pay off quite nicely, because I've got a bunch of missions for it, and we'll see that next. But first we need to get back to the station, so we do my standard thing of slowing down at Kerbal, and doing it, basically slowing down once and then coming back around to slow down even more so that we can actually meet the station. So you see, I'll just do this until I get a close encounter and a lower orbit. But I burned a little late, really, so I'm just going to leave it here. But yeah, this is quite nice. The problem with the spacecraft, this replaced the Ares 2, which really should go to the station at some point, which should go to the moon station. It's currently on the filling up a docking port on the Hermes station. I want it to be on the Neptune station around the moon, just to be part of it, really, because it's got a fuel store and a little bit of life support, and I can put docking ports on it. Basically the problem with that was it didn't have enough Delta V, whereas this one has more than enough, which is rather nice. You can see we still have 400 units of fuel up in the top. We still have a lot of slowing down to do, though. But yeah, after a lot of this slowing down and keeping my separation at about 1 kilometer, we get in nice and close, as you can see here. And there is the station, a big X across the sky. I am going to expand it a little more. I have a few things I want to put on it. Some of it for testing, some of it just to make it a more functional station. But at some point, I may build a bigger station, more of a fueling station, something more industrial. This will probably remain in orbit as a research outpost, but will be less active because the fueling station will be more important. I know this is a fueling station, but I mean a really big fueling station, which could be quite cool. Anyway, I mentioned earlier about Eve, and yes, this is the buzzard for the probe we sent to Eve a little while ago. The probes get to Eve quite quickly because they're accelerating towards it rather than when they're slowing down as they approach the outer solar system. But yeah, we've got our maneuver laid in, and our I think this I've forgotten exactly what rocket this is. I think it was launched on a Pulsar 3 with a interplanetary stage in the fairing. So yeah, but anyway, that stage will be able to slow us down around Eve quite nicely. But first we need to get a little bit of science, just because, we have things to clean up, and also if we transmit the science back, we complete the first of our contracts. As you can see at the top right, it's come up, and we got 56,000 for that, and a little bit of science, just for sending some data back. And now we're going to get data just for data, because we need science. Although I have to say the labs do produce so much science that I don't really worry that much about it anymore. I think labs might be a little overpowered, actually. I love them, but they seem to just generate so much science. I mean, that's great in hard mode, because I wouldn't have been able to get all of that science otherwise. And maybe that's why the developers did it, because, in hard mode you get less science returns and less money returns, and that's what I have now. So now I have a bunch of science outposts just generating huge amounts of science, which is pretty much fueling my research projects, which is quite nice. It means I can just kind of send things for fun. But I will be doing more science because there's still quite a lot of high value things I've got to unlock, and we've got a lot of probes getting places. But I would like to have fairly maximum technology for my mission to Duna. There will be a big mission to Duna. There's going to be at least 2. One of them will be a preliminary mission, and the second one will be a proper base mission. But anyway, there we are in orbit of Eve. All nicely. I'm going to take a bunch of reports. We have a lot of electric charge, so we can do this in the dark, although the electric charge may be poorly distributed between the 2 spacecraft. Yes, this is 2 spacecraft, of course, as I usually do. There is an orbiter and a lander. The lander with short-range communications, and the that can communicate with the orbiter, and the orbiter that will communicate home as a relay, which is quite nice. Of course, that's coming in KSP 1.2, a sort of simplified remote tech, which is great, but also kind of shitty because I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to update fully, which probably won't be super great, but I'm sure remote tech will incorporate that. The modding community around KSP is just ridiculously, insanely awesome. Like, when have you ever seen another game that has such a intense modding community of constantly keeping their mods up to date and reworking them, and when people finally do give up, someone else takes them on because it's so important to people's games? I think it's just crazy. It's like, I remember when I first tried modding Minecraft, I was like, why haven't these mods been updated to 1.8? Why don't people do this? Why aren't people constantly? And it's just like, you don't get that in other games. But anyway, yes. So I think we might just be ready to drop that lander into the atmosphere of Eve. Not the first time we've landed on Eve. We did get a MechJeb core to the to the oceans, but that wasn't much a very active probe. But talking of inactive probes, I've been looking for batteries on this the whole time, and it would appear I didn't put any batteries on this probe. So when I decouple this, I have 10 electric charge, and I'll deploy these. And there is, of course, a signal delay, which is, yeah, kind of annoying. Talking of signal delay, a little later when I was trying to control this, I was wondering why I wasn't moving, and it turns out, for the first time ever, it's signal delayed my control inputs, which is weird. It's never done it with the spacecraft before. I know it does it in Realism Overhaul, but not in this. So this spins out of control, and I do quick load, because I had no idea that was going to happen. So, yeah, I don't know what's going on with that. That's a really weird edge case. So I'm just going to use the flight computer to maneuver to the into orbit. I'm going to keep that one solar panel out, and I'm going to descend through the atmosphere just by deploying those parachutes to open at the correct altitude. They're actually set to deploy at different altitudes, just in case I'm wrong, because I am pretty much just guessing. But yeah, anyway, so there's 10 electric charge on this, which probably isn't enough electric charge to get through the atmosphere. So I'm not sure if this will survive. I have deployed one of the solar panels, which aren't redeployable. This is a terribly designed probe. Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking when I designed it. These solar panels won't redeploy, so I've deployed one which will burn off in the atmosphere, and if by some miracle I get to the surface with any electric charge, I'll deploy the other solar panel, but it's not looking good. My mission for landing on Eve is to return science data, not just to land on Eve. This is my primary objective. I've split this mission into 3 objectives. Two, the primary objective, the secondary objective, and an optional tertiary objective. This is, of course, the first objective. The second objective is to take the orbiter into orbit of Gilly, and the optional tertiary objective is to land the orbiter on Gilly. Because it's not a lander, but Gilly's basically just an asteroid. Anyway, so I'm going to grab all of the science on the way down anyway, just in case. While I'm in the atmosphere. As you can see, I'm entering now. The solar panel burns off. The heat shield holds up quite well, and it's looking pretty good. I've got the flight computer making sure we stay retrograde, because the flight computer is incredibly useful, especially when weird shit like this happens. And yeah, so it's looking good. I mean, we are going to run out of electric charge because slowing down on Eve it takes so long, and I can't open the parachutes just before we hit the ground because I've already deployed the parachutes and I don't have any control. Oh, I do have control. But anyway, yeah, maybe I should have done that then. Oh god, I'm so stupid. But I would have run out of control here. And the parachutes go and that's fine, and I have no control now. But it will descend to the surface. I think I'm on above solid ground, which is good. So yeah, we will be landing our probe on Eve today, but it will not be returning any science, and I doubt I'll be able to get it active without a manned mission. And yeah. Anyway, it takes a long time to descend to the surface, so I skip about 400 meters, and here we are, just about to properly touch down a probe for the first time on Eve. And we do get 30 grand for the world first milestone, which is great. This is the first objective is half completed, but ultimately a failure. I do warp today and get a very nice shot of the green atmosphere. Well, it looks green because of the sun, and obviously that's just Scatterer being funny. Having fun with the colours and stuff. But yeah, it kind of sucks, but I'm not too bothered because I've got 2 more objectives I can complete, which will be very profitable and very science-worthy. And actually, that's not super unrealistic of Venus missions. Most of all of the initial Venus missions just were crushed by pressure when they were descending through the atmosphere, and even the few that did get to the surface, they did return some pretty amazing images, but they were crushed by the pressure. So maybe we can say that I didn't accidentally not put batteries on there. I was simulating being crushed by the pressure. No, of course not. It was my foolhardery, but yeah. Anyway, so after doing a little prograde burn, which you saw just then, I figure out, rather than doing a proper inclination change, I'm going to actually make myself more inclined relative to Gilly, and then that'll actually get me my encounter for much less delta V. So this is actually a much more efficient way of getting to Gilly in this single edge case, but because it would have been probably about 500 meters per second delta V to get there. And yes, slowing down around Gilly would have been a little less delta V if I had flattened my trajectory, but I would have had to do a bunch of other stuff as well. So this actually was the most efficient way. It was quite nice. I just increased my inclination and everything works out quite well. We will get to Gilly. But yes, the orbiter is still active and will be well, we'll be working hard to complete its second 2 objectives, and considering I didn't get any science from the surface of Eve, I've decided that landing on Gilly is no longer an optional tertiary objective, it is part of the secondary objective. We will be going to Gilly and we will be landing on Gilly, because I also maybe impulsively took on a contract to explore Gilly, which involves landing on Gilly and returning science from the surface of Gilly, so we will be doing that. Anyway, so I get my encounter, but I'm not particularly happy with it, because firstly it's flickering, and I know that still means I still will get to Gilly, but I'm not particularly happy with it. So I start manually tweaking it just by burning retrograde and progress, and burning north? What's that, radial? Yeah, burning radial, normal. God damn it, all of these words. There's too many complicated words for this. But yeah, we get our encounter a little closer, 40 kilometers, and I will do a tweak at some point. As you can see, I'm just going to do a slight prograde burn here, and we'll get much closer to Gilly to gain all of the effect of the Oberth effect of this tiny little asteroid. Yeah, well, it's actually a pretty big asteroid. I'm not exactly sure the dimensions of Gilly, but I imagine it would be a planet killer if it were to hit. But yeah, I mean, at some point I will actually be doing an asteroid capture mission. Because, well, my Buzzard program is almost over, which is exploring the inner solar system with probes. I mean, one has gone to Duna, one has gone to Eve, one has gone to, actually I think 2 have gone to Moho, and one is not that far off Dres. Eagle will still be heading out to Joule. But yeah, the next phase will be more of a manned focus, building my things for going to Mars, for Duna. And I will still be probably sending some probes, but to Moho and things, but my main objective is manned stuff and returning an asteroid. But anyway, here we are at Gilly, just getting the science from high above and transmitting that back, getting lots of rather nice money for starting. We had a mission to fly by Gilly. You may have seen me complete, and we've got to explore Gilly and maybe science data from the space around Gilly. I'm not entirely sure. But I know I had a few objectives and it would be very profitable. And we will close out this episode with 2.5 million funds, which is about 1 million more than I had at the start. So this has been a very profitable mission, considering the rocket was reusable. This cost less than 50,000 to put here, which is quite nice, really. And I guess if you factored in the tiny cost of the use of the of my satellite network, which would be quite small. I imagine that's been mitigated by now because I used reusable rockets to put them there. Reusable rockets, of course, are the future. Well, they're the now in this, but in the real world they will be the future. I wonder when SpaceX will be flying their flight-proven booster. I imagine it'll be delayed slightly. Anyway, we get our objectives for getting into orbit of Gilly, and I think we already got one for sending science data back from around Gilly, and obviously we keep getting world first and things. So yeah, I'm just apparently still high above Gilly, which is kind of annoying because Gilly is quite small, so this counts as a high orbit, even though it's quite a nice orbit actually. And we still have 46 meters per second of delta V, which I believe to be more than enough to land. You can see my orbital velocity is about 18 meters per second, so if I were to null my velocity and then land, that would be fine. Although I'm obviously not going to do that because that's pretty inefficient. But anyway, we drift behind Gilly and lose communications briefly, even though there is one other satellite in orbit of Eve, which was put there a long time ago. I think it was one of the Kestrel probes, which was just an orbiter, which, yeah, did a pretty good job, I think. But this is a far more advanced probe. In fact, it can both be a relay to a failed probe and a lander, picking up the pieces of the mission. But yeah, so we've got ourselves a suborbital trajectory. I assume I got a world first for that. I clicked through the missions quite quickly, but yeah, I'm pretty pleased about how this mission turns out. Landing on Gilly, made a lot of money. Yeah, the Eve thing kind of didn't go super to plan, but that's fine. Yeah. So this will probably world first. Yeah, there we go. I guess that was for entering a suborbital trajectory. My post-production window sometimes stops a little bit, so I can't exactly see what's happening. I'm just tweaking myself so I don't land on that hill, because that hill looks like a horrible place to land, even on Gilly, with its such a low gravity. But that means there's hardly any friction as well, so I'll just slide all the way down that hill. And this doesn't have any landing legs or anything, it is just an orbiter that was meant to orbit Gilly. And you can see, I mean, I only had 46 meters per second of delta V left, so it was pretty edge case that I could land on here. I only just pulled it off, but obviously the glorious tape can do anything. But yeah, and you can see I've finally put ground scatter on. There's actually rocks here. I haven't had that on in a while. But yeah, anyway, so we're just going to come in to land. And here we are, just slowing ourselves to land on Gilly for the first time. That's 2 landings in one episode. Not bad, and I'll show it you in real time here so you can see how slow we're going, how little we're accelerating under Gilly's little tiny gravity, tiny gravitational pull. But yes, we do just about touch down. There we go. We touched down on Gilly for the first time. 2 missions have been completed. Land on Gilly, and obviously the Land on Gilly world first milestone, which is rather nice. So we're just going to lie onto our belly when we can, so that we can use friction to try and slow down a little bit, and then pretty much just use the engine to try and null our velocity, and so that we can take some science. But obviously I'm pointing up a hill, so when I fire my engine I get some kind of upward velocity, so sometimes I take off a little bit, which is kind of annoying. But yeah, we're going to observe that materials bay, get a little science, transmit that to back to complete our explore Gilly contract, which is quite nice, and we'll get that, and you can see 320,000 and 27,000 for explore Gilly. So yeah, we've made a lot of money off that. Anyway, here we are, just in 4 times time accelerate. We'll take the rest of the science. But yes, that is the end of the episode as we send all of this back. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope you will come back for future episodes where I will hopefully be sending Kerbals to Duna, maybe Eve, maybe Jewel, and returning asteroids and all of that fun stuff. We'll be really stepping it up, I hope. But yes, anyway, here we are at the end of the video, and if you wanted to go check out a couple more videos, there's my latest episode of Spore, where I don't know what nukes are, but hopefully that'll be next episode. There's my latest episode of Fall of Kerbal, well, the Fall of Kerbal preview, where I just look at tanks again. Everything goes wrong, as it tends to. Well, not everything, a few things go wrong. But yeah, it's pretty fun if you want to go see some tanks, shoot some tanks. That'll be, you can go check that out. And there's also a link to my Patreon on screen, which you can go check out, or totally not if you don't feel like it. And links to my Patreon, Twitch, and Twitter in the description. So yes, anyway, that is all my selling done. I will see you next time.